What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 15 of me building my own AI search startup as a one-person company, and it's been an amazing journey so far. Over a year working on this, and I want to start sharing more and more about what I'm building, how I'm building, and this is sort of a mini series I'm starting on how I'm using sort of coding LLMs, AI coding, um, coding agents to kind of help me build this thing, which would be impossible otherwise, for me to build this kind of an infrastructure and platform alone, um, that is on par, in my opinion, once this all said and done, with some of the giants in the industry. And then by par, I mean the core functionality is pretty robust, pretty good. It's amazing yeah, what you can accomplish. Um, Now, what I want to go into detail is um, not so much about the product. I have promised after 15 episodes, I'll do a demo. This is the 15th episode, so I am planning a demo. Um, um, but in this session, I want to focus on some of the sort of AI coding tools and sort of almost like strategies, what I've been using. Um, so yeah, let's get going. So first thing is this what you see on the screen. This is a migration from a sort of Python build tool. I was using Poetry, and I wanted to migrate our, Claude and Codex. I use both Claude and Codex. Um, they recommended to move to UV, and what I'm showing is you don't have to worry about all the details, but look at all the green checks and how cleanly my entire code base, these coding LLMs help me migrate. And this is sort of the output is what you see, and it's incredible. And I was thinking, if I was used to work for Google, and if we were to do this, even though it's nowhere close to the size of code base Google has, it would still be months long project with several people involved. And this is something I accomplished in a day, less than a day actually, 4 hours, 6 hours. And I have a lot of code, and a lot of scripts, and a lot of docs, and all that, and you can see some of the details here. But this one way, um, these coding LLMs have helped me, apart from just helping me code. Uh, in sort of the strategy here that I want to share is what I did was I asked both Claude Opus 4.5 and Codex 5.2 to come up with a plan, and they independently came up with slightly sort of different plans, and then I merged them together, some with my sort of just own experience, and some sort of kind of working with both of them to see how we can come up with the best of both plans, and then we settled on a final plan, saved the plan in a file. I like markdown files, in a markdown file, and then I like to have a status file to kind of track progress. These are all ways you can do so that these coding LLMs don't get lost. When you use both Claude, Codex, or any sort of these LLMs, what you'll run into often, and I run into very often, is compaction. And so they compact, the conversation gets too long, doesn't fit in the context window, and the LLMs compact. Codex was terrible at it just 3 months back, 2 months back. Now they've improved. But Claude is still incredible at how good it is at compacting efficiently and while retaining all the important data. But regardless, compaction loses a lot of detail because it's compression, it's like compression. So you kind of retain some of the highlights. So that can cause problems on kind of keeping track of things, and sometimes these LMs do occasionally get lost if the request is very complicated with multiple steps. And so these two techniques, or three techniques, really help. Number one, you can use multiple LLMs and ask the same request, and ask each one of them come up with a plan, separate plan, and then merge it. And there are lots of ways to merge it. You can ask one of the LLMs to merge, or you can ask both LLMs to merge separately and then sort of combine. And what I like to do is sort of cherry pick, or rather review both plans and see what I like, what I don't like, and kind of I call out. I like this, I don't like this, and then put both plans together and then combine. And I generally use Opus for that because Opus is much more agentic and sort of deep, thoughtful in it. Uh, Codex is also good, but Codex actually can spot things that oftentimes Claude has missed, which is amazing. So it's very detail oriented in that sense. But I'm used to maybe I'm just used to Claude doing overall a better job. But Codex is still right there, very close. I use Ultra High, by the way, Codex 5.2. So this is like the best of the best of the best models that are currently available. They both are $200 plans. So that's one. Ask both LLMs. Second is what I said earlier. Come up with a plan document. Okay, this is my plan. Now, my plans change all the time. So as we go through the plan, I'm like, oh, you know what? Now I'm thinking this. Or now we know this as we implemented step 1 and step 2. I want to change step 3 and 4. I want to introduce a 2.5 and 3.5. So the status becomes, or plan becomes a living document. And I'm not afraid to do it. And these LLMs are generally very accommodating. And I've never gone through a very large sort of plan and not change it. A lot of people on YouTube, etc., come up with a plan and ask LLM to do it. Very bad. These are not ways you build production grade applications. The best way to work with these is let the LLM do the work, but you're keeping an eye. And you're spotting things as it outputs, and like you see sometimes where it's struggling, or like, for example, it will say, I ran into a very large file. Let me figure something out. Now you should kind of think that, oh, maybe this is a good time to break it down. And you can even ask in a separate session to, hey, come up with a visual diagram to help me understand why this file is so large and how it fits in the architecture in a separate session, so you don't disturb this. Now you know, and then you can sort of intervene and help out. So you kind of have to keep an eye. Now, it doesn't mean you keep staring at the screen. All the output is logged in the terminal. So I use terminals. I don't use, I used to use cursor, but not for me. So terminals, so everything's logged. And even if you lose the terminal or your Mac or Windows, whatever tool you use, if you lose the session or you accidentally close it, you still have files in the file system. You can just look it up online. Everything's saved. So you can still go through the notes. Both Codex and Claude, sort of all the sort of notes that it logged, and then you can see what's going on and kind of keep an eye. So you got to keep an eye, either real time or sort of after the fact. I'm always kind of doing a little bit real time, but then I'll step away or I'll work on something else and then come back and then I review everything. It's easier for me. So that's number one. Have a plan doc, but don't be afraid to have the plan doc be living, be a living doc, and don't be afraid to change it. I've forked in a different direction so many times. I've forked, and then a fork has had more forks and had more forks. As long as I'm mentally able to kind of track and also have separate docs to track, you can do it. That's the best way to work with these tools, because otherwise you'll build something and you end up somewhere where it's done. You can call it done, but it'll be lacking, or it may not be optimal. Or you may have lost some opportunities to improve your plan, your design, your architecture. I'm thinking of an example where I did that recently. I mean, I just did it yesterday so many times. Trying to think of an example. I think the easy one was like the file was very large, and so I asked it to break it down. But that was not very interesting. Let me think of a better one. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So because this is a streaming sort of backend that I'm building, just like other AI tools, I forgot to have the streaming events for a new component that I was building, incorporate the streaming components. When we came up with the plan and sort of finalized it, and sort of LLMs were helping me out. And so then I sort of, while I finish some of the tasks, I'm like, oh, I forgot to add events, and now maybe a good time to plan or add some of them, or what do you think? And it kind of helped me out. We update the plan doc, and when the plan was complete, the events were also incorporated. So that's an example. So that's sort of tip number 2. And tip number 3 is to have a status document. So plan is just only keep tasks that you are tracking in the plan. And I also like to track linear tickets or Jira or whatever you're using, so that you also have all the data, all the logging in the sort of your ticket system, GitHub, Jira, or linear. I love linear. As a one-person startup, I pay $12 a month. Totally worth it. So that's what you track in your plan doc, your linear ticket or whatever ticket system, your task and dependencies and things like that. But the status, you don't mess with that plan doc. Have a separate status doc. And I also ask the AI tools to guess a percentage, how much we are done. And so it does a really good job. The new Opus 4.5 is incredible at it. And Codex too, actually, both of them, they're incredible at it. I'll generally use Codex for tracking status because I find it much more detail oriented. I'll give an example where Claude missed something, but sort of Codex picked it up. And Codex takes a lot more time, a lot more thinking. Claude is more eager to kind of complete and okay, on to the next. And Codex is always like, hold on. It's like thinking through, sometimes you get lost and then it comes back. It comes up with a much more grounded explanation and plan oftentimes, but it's just so much slower. I mean, in my case, sometimes 10x slower. So those are 3 tips to kind of work, and I recommend working with multiple LLMs, but keep your sanity. So I also use Gemini, but I use it mostly for doc authoring, kind of updating docs, or finding out, hey, what's the test coverage, or write a quick script, or smaller tasks. I don't have yet confidence it can handle what Claude, Opus, and Codex 5.2 Ultra High can do. I've tried so many times, and again, Gemini is even more eager than Claude to kind of, oh, okay, thinking done, let me get to it, and starts working and it's just done. It lacks the depth, the discipline, and then I see it's getting better, 3.0 Pro, but it still doesn't come close for production grade, large scale, mega scale applications, backend systems, etc. just today. So that's one example. So I use these AI LLMs and the same kind of techniques I just said, and I did an entire migration of my backend to UV. My backend is completely Python backend. And look at the report I got. It's so beautiful. I verified everything. I asked it to check in everything, and it's done. It even called out SEO master plan is untracked. So that's something I'm doing in a separate session, working on SEO. And it's like, ooh, I also see some files that are not related to our UV migration, just calling it out untracked. So intentionally left, which is great because I have parallel sessions. And I sometimes don't do branches because then you have to merge. So that's one. I also want to show you some other things. This is an example where I asked, this is Claude. Claude is excellent at diagramming. Hey, come up with how are we doing test-wise? And help me build a test dashboard completely in CLI. I don't want a web and all that. It's too slow. I also want scriptable, blah, blah, blah. And it came up with this as a proposal, by the way. Incredible. Now, this is something that actually is not very interesting, but the only reason I'm showing you here is this is an area, you don't have to read too much into it, but all you can see is recommended approach up top. So Claude was kind of called out something that, hey, this is like too big, like 2,000 lines of duplicate code, and it's like a mess of a code, because when you work with these coding tools, sometimes they're very eager to code and they duplicate what's already elsewhere. And Claude X found it, but it was still struggling, and so I asked Codex to help out, and this is what Codex said. Wait, Codex said, wait, there's some duplication, 2,000 lines, blah, blah, blah. There's also this, there's that. I think we should do this, right? So again, Codex being sort of the older sibling almost. So it helps. That's why it helps to have more than one LLM to kind of help you out. But you have to keep your sanity, otherwise you'll go crazy. And this is an example where Codex caught something, and V is my name, but because I'm also always involved and I'm writing things. So here I'm writing things, but a lot of things I wrote came from Codex. And so Codex helped me catch something. And oh, by the way, this is Claude writing. So Claude is saying, oh, I missed this. You found something, a critical issue I overlooked. So this was one of the issues where Claude was a little bit struggling. And it noticed this very large file and duplication, etc. But it's like, okay, but I'll do this because it has a tendency. It's programmed to keep going. These are reinforcement learned models to keep going, to complete the task to the best of ability. Only if something gigantic comes in their way, they'll give up. So very rarely in my case, like 90% of the time they'll complete, but that doesn't mean they're doing the best job. So I keep an eye, or I notice it kind of struggled and it said, okay, but for now I'll do this, or let me do this. That's a red flag, because Claude has a habit to do it. These become like kind of almost like people, like or artificial alien friends or colleagues or teammates that you have. You start to learn their personality. You start to know their strengths and kind of areas where sometimes they struggle with, and so that's what I've learned. I've learned, and even as the models evolve, like I've been using Claude or since 3.30 something Codex 2 from day one, and their personalities don't change that much. They get better, but they kind of retain their personality. This is the problem with these very large models. And that's what I've noticed with Claude. Like it tries to satisfy the task, which is great, thank you. But sometimes if it runs into a major roadblock, it kind of maneuvers around it, but rather quickly, and misses some detail. And so then I spot it and I'm like, hey, Codex, help me out. And Codex came up with this, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit and shared it with Claude. And Claude's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you noticed something you found something that I glossed over, like I missed. Sorry, So that's the kind of thing that, that's the kind of thing I wanted to call out in this video. So how I'm using, I think the summary is that it helps to use more than one LLM, because they all have strengths and weaknesses, and they have personalities. You have to kind of learn and understand, and the more you learn, work with them, you'll pick them up very quickly, and it's kind of interesting. So Claude ran to this, or Codex ran to this. I will say though, Claude is the more capable, but because of its eagerness to complete, it glosses over things. Codex is great, but lacks that agentic. Still not as I don't know how to say it, but it's Codex doesn't log, even though I've set maximum logging on the screen. It thinks a lot, but it's hard to kind of follow Codex. But always at the end, it always returns the sort of final whatever task it completed. Very deep. It has done a very detailed job. It takes the time, and it completes, but it's very slow because of that. And so I like it because it's like I said, it's like the older sibling of Claude, or like the senior engineer in my case, and Claude's like or maybe Codex like a principal engineer. I don't know, however you look at senior engineer, mid-level engineer, Claude, and I kind of use both of them. But yeah, Codex it's very hard for me to describe where sort of Codex falls short of Claude. It's just slow. That's just one thing, and it gets frustrating because it's so slow, and Claude just goes on and boom, boom, boom. And also, I think I want to say, the coding abilities when it comes. So once you have a plan, and the LLMs, any of these LLMs have a plan and they're coding, I think Claude generally writes better code, and by better I just simply mean it's more aware of its surroundings, and it kind of just modular code. It writes good modular code, and keeps kind of, again, I'm struggling, as you can tell. I can't put a finger on it where Codex, like where it needs to improve, but it just hasn't given me the confidence yet to ask it for big coding tasks. And like clearly I'm struggling to come up with it, but the speed is the one thing I can call out. It's very slow compared to Claude. And I'm talking about Claude Opus, the biggest model. 4.5 is still very slow. It's frustrating. I almost lose patience working with Codex. Maybe that's the only thing I can say. But I never lose patience working with Claude. It's just a pleasure to work with. But it falls short so many times, and kind of Codex kind of picks it up. So that's why I use both of them, and sort of Gemini on the side. But yeah, those are some things I wanted to share. I think apart from using multiple LLMs, um, and by the way, you can use these multiple in a variety of ways, but don't ask both of them to do the same thing because they'll start changing files. That's bad. And also, don't have too many parallel sessions. They'll drive you crazy. But using multiple LLMs is great. Don't uh, be grounded. Don't try to rush. Don't try to like I want to do this and post on YouTube and like build. I built this in a weekend. I mean, there are a lot of people who do this. They don't go very far. They become influencers. I'm not. I'm building the startup. That's more important. But so keep your sanity. Number two is have a status. A planning doc. Archive all the planning docs. Log it in Git, and keep committing it so you can see the diff, and have a status doc. So that you can track the progress, and it's all persistent and it's in Git. Check in both the planning doc, the status docs, and nicely organize these planning and status docs as well. And finally, use these tools to create dashboards. I like ASCII dashboard, and you can build web dashboards. They're pretty good at it to kind of help you keep things moving in an automated way. So I showed you earlier how it helps propose a test dashboard. And one way I do multiple sessions is I do some testing stuff in one session and coding stuff in one session. I don't do two coding sessions, rarely, but it's like one coding session and the other is more like infrastructure-y, test-like, etc., or some kind of migration, or maybe front end. So back end and front end coding, maybe you can do parallel. Sometimes I do it. But keeping your sanity and not avoiding the urge to just finish things, but taking the time helps you spot things that, what these LLMs kind of glossed over or went too quickly or just did it and added a bunch of duplicate code, or didn't look at the service that was already existed, created a new service, or didn't use the cache, even though there's cache and you had instructed using cache, things like that. So yeah, just keep yourself grounded and keep the LLMs grounded in code and docs. So that's all for today. Until next time, see ya.